Hello everyone, how is your day going? So, welcome to episode 2 of Beyond the Binary. I'm your host Ashwin Kumar Uppala, the co-founder and current lead of Hack Club Hyderabad. Tonight we have our co-host Love Kushbiani, who is the administration lead of our club and also pretty passionate about what we are going to talk about tonight's theme, and that is developer relations. For that, we have someone very special in the DevRel area, Aditya Oberoi, who is a DevRel at Appright, Major League Hacking coach, lead at Google Developer Students Club MET, a gold Microsoft Learn student ambassador. I can go like this throughout the show. So let's just welcome Aditya Oberoi on screen. Drop an emoji to welcome him in the chat. Hi Aditya, how are you doing? How's the day?
Hello.
Hey. How are you? I've
We are doing
think
great. First of all, thank you so much for getting your time into this show. We are pretty glad that you are here to address about this theme. It's pretty interesting.
Glad to share the screen with you.
Thanks a lot for having me on. I don't have much to say about my day. You already made it with that introduction, so it's going great so far. But I
Yeah.
hope you've been having fun as well. And I remember the first event was yesterday. We're having fun, Hyderabad right now. Huh? So
Yeah.
good to
Yep.
see all this
So
is happening.
And
indeed, we'll
congratulations
jump.
for being featured in top 100.
Thank you, thank you.
For those who don't know,
I'm telling you, it's just a
Aditya is
surprise.
one of the top 100 DevRels of the year.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Yep.
I have no idea how that one happened. Um, but it was nice. It was nice. Good to see Siddharth in that list as well as so many other amazing people, right? So, yeah, it was nice to see
Yeah.
that list come out.
Yep. So, since that list was about developer relations, that's the whole theme of tonight, and we'll jump straight for the first questions for the audience. For those who don't know, what is developer relations? Can you tell our audience about that?
Interesting question. I think that's probably the main big question of today, considering
Yep.
that's what this
Indeed.
discussion is going to be about. I think when I talk about developer relations, at least, I like to take a little step back to kind of set up why this domain was necessary in the first place. Because if I just tell what the domain is, it might seem as a little flashy or showy, difficult to understand at times. Um, so let me take a step back and give a little context as to why this is necessary, and then I'll kind of lead and talk more about what it is. Let Ashwin, think about today's tech scenario, right? Um, Maybe 5 years back, you had a lot of companies catering just to a general consumer or a business, but think about how many organizations, products there are around that are catering to other developers, right? Today, whether we take examples of organizations like Twilio or Elastic or MongoDB or so many more, Azure, GCP, any of these. Today, we're now in a world, right, where aside from just catering to a general consumer or a general business, companies are catering directly to developers because we are moving towards a more tech enabled world. We have more people building today than ever before. Now, when you have an organization which is catering to developers, you have to ensure that any information flow, any content, any education, any samples are going out in a way that are easily understandable by developers, right? It's no more just conventionally getting the word out, no more plain old communication or PR, for example. Uh, Again, not to say that that's not something that's still there for companies, but for companies that cater dedicatedly to developers, there has to be an extra emphasis on understanding the developer, on catering to the developer to ensure that this content is going across in a manner that assists the developer. So this is actually what kind of gave rise to this domain called developer relations. People in DevRel had been around for a while. You had technical evangelists at Microsoft 15 years back as well. But in a world today that is either primarily or secondarily catering to developers, whether it's a developer first company, that's its primary aim is to cater to developers like MongoDB or Elastic, for example, or if it's a developer plus company, which has offerings that cater like Microsoft, for example, you need to make sure, right, that there's going to be someone there who's creating the right content, education that's educational, the right sort of announcements, the right um, sample solutions, the right tutorials. There's so many different places, right, around content. You need someone who can interact with communities, who can ensure that the communication happens in the right manner, but is at the same time technically proficient to help connect with the developer to be able to solve their issues. That's kind of what DevRel does, in the sense that you bridge the gap between a product and the developer. You are the one who maintains that information flow, or ensures that the right feedback is coming across, information is the right content is going out, the right loops for any sort of feedback, any research are maintained. Any samples that need to be created, you're probably involved in that as well. So it's really a little of a lot, but in its most basic essence, it kind of bridges and acts as a glue between the developer and the product.
I really like it's a little about the lot. Yeah, that definitely explains what DevRel is. It's like it's definitely the bridge between the product and the developer. So that also means if you are interested to get your hands in both of them, developer relations is a good place to try it out. Now,
Currently, the DevRel is
I
trending
want to
right now
kind
in
of
Twitter.
disagree on that,
oh, is it?
and I'll tell you why. I don't believe you start trying to help out by getting into DevRel. I think you start doing it otherwise, and I realize you're already doing that thing. That you're already doing DevRel. It's uh, you know it's like saying I'll start coding for the first time by becoming a software engineer. Think about this. What happens first? Are you learning
Interesting.
coding first, or are you becoming a software engineer first? It's the same thing with DevRel, right? You're gonna build these practices, you're gonna build these habits, and that's when you kind of walk into DevRel. It's after this, after you get a taste of creating content or working with communities or building software, actually all of them together, that you're in a better position to think about whether DevRel is your thing, because I want to make sure that any of you thinking are asking yourselves this question, because I think a lot of people don't give themselves a chance on these facets and kind of say we're gonna do DevRel, maybe just because it seems a little more glorious, or because they're scared of one of these domains like software engineering, for example. So you have to give yourself a chance at all of these to make a decision whether DevRel is a thing for you. Um, but yeah, you don't start doing this by thinking about DevRel. You move towards DevRel by actually building these habits and practices.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Currently, the DevRel is trending right now. I'm thinking in Twitter. All my feed is filled
So
with
wild.
pictures with DevRel. Yeah. And how did you get started with DevRel? And how was your experience been so long being as DevRel?
So professionally, I'm doing DevRel. I'm in my first DevRel job. As far as the work goes, I've been doing it for the last 2.5 years now. I've been active with communities. I've been active with programs. I've been coding. I've been building projects. I've been trying to work on content. Communities have been my big front. So I got started with different programs. I got connected with people who were in DevRel, which is how I kind of learned about the space myself. I built these practices. I've worked at these for 1.5, 2 years, and then I took a decision to that I wanted to professionally move towards DevRel. But I won't say there was like one single first experience, because, like I said, right, it's all of these different facets together. So I'd been doing these independently, and it's only eventually after doing these for a while that I realized that that's what I've been doing. DevRel has been my thing, but I won't say it was one role that kind of defined it for me, because I think that way I did a community manager internship, which was heavily focused on growth. I did a user research internship. I did a thorough software dev internship as well. And then, there was community work, and there were hackathons as a participant, as an organizer. So there were so many different things, and they all came together. Um, I see a comment in the chat which is kind of really close to what I say. I see a comment on DevRel is more like a culture than than a role. I agree. I think it's a philosophy. That's how I like to phrase it. It's a philosophy that you embody rather than a role you join. That's definitely, you know, I would actually not recommend looking at DevRel as a role first until you're doing all of these, because just setting yourself up for failure if you're not getting a taste of these beforehand. And for me, that's what I did. Because like technically, I'm in my first DevRel role, but I've been doing relevant stuff for 2 years, right? Anyway, so it's not as easy to kind of define that question. And I think I am also learning more about this, about how I perceive it, how people around me perceive it, because it's such an evolving space. So that's of course a debate that I have with myself as to, but I can't pinpoint one specific first experience. I think it's all of these coming together that made me realize that it's been a space that I've been active in.
Cool.
Indeed. So, uh, how did you realize that you were going to do DevRel? And if someone is there in the audience, why should someone do it? What kind of interest would
Good
you
point.
say a DevRel
Um,
seeks?
See, when let's look at some of the best, or some of actually most DevRel, professional DevRel. Um, they all possess a few different traits. They're highly communicative. They have their hands on tech. Um, they they tend to have experience with communities. That's a front they tend to stay active around. They tend to have experience around content. Um, I think so. These are a few minimums that I've seen that most DevRel that I have around me. These are fronts that they tend to have activity on. I will intentionally not put influencers or social media stuff in these few traits, because unlike the trending belief, that's actually not a mandate for DevRel. That's absolutely not. Anyone who believes that social media is the way, that acts as a validation at times. It does not talk at all about your skill. So don't put that pressure on yourself, please. Sure, building social media following, if you want to do that, why not? Awesome. But it can be a byproduct of your work. It doesn't have to be a dedicated effort. Like for me, it hasn't been a dedicated effort. It's just been a byproduct of everything else. Um, so that's something that kind of builds up, but that doesn't have to be a dedicated skill. But yeah, content, um, some sense of code, some sense of community. They like being communicative is definitely a point I will keep up there, because think about the two words developer relations. There are two facets there, right? You've got the developer and you've got the relations. You need to be able to do both. So that's kind of what that's the sort of skills you need at the very minimum, at the most fundamental level. And the way to develop these would be to work in communities, to build, of course, to write content, to speak at forums. And I think I'd been doing this for enough of a while before I took the decision that this is what I wanted to do. Uh, I spent that time, after which I realized that this is something I actually enjoyed, rather than just something for my resume or for my following, right? That's what happened for me. It's a realization that came to me that this is what I wanted to do next, after uh, you know after college. So I didn't directly set out to find why I did it. It's a realization that happened upon me as I've been doing all of these. But I made sure that I gave myself the chances to experience other fronts as well. I did an internship as a developer. I did an internship as a community manager. I had a user researcher internship. So I try to give myself opportunities on different fronts as well, rather than dedicatedly decide that this is what I will try to understand and then close myself off to everything outside of this. So, for anyone who wants to do it, please give yourself the chance to actually experiment and understand whether those individual facets are for you as well. Because a lot of us kind of run towards these because we're scared of other opportunities. Like, we're scared of being a developer at times. So, we're like, we'll do DevRel. But that's not how things work. Because even as someone in DevRel, you need to be able to develop. Otherwise, how do you help a developer? Right? Just like that's an example of what happens at times. So give yourself a chance at all of these individual facets is what I will recommend. And if you still come to the same answer that this is something you thoroughly enjoy and you want to do, please, why not? You'll have the necessary experience to actually take a decision on that.
Yeah, that's a great advice actually. Uh, to try out different things before trying to jump to one conclusion. At least that way you know what not to do and what to
Oh
do.
yeah, absolutely.
We learn
Yeah.
new things by
So
doing new things. Yeah.
exactly. So ever since you started as DevRel, how has it impacted your career? How has it
I've been in a good
changed your
position.
career path?
Like, I think I came to a realization at the end of my third year that I wanted to move towards DevRel, and I got a really good opportunity. So it's in a good position right now, is what I will say. I'm pretty happy with where I am in my career. I think I've got a great opportunity, uh, great organization, damn good team for sure. So I'm really happy with where I am in my career right now.
That's nice. We got a pretty nice question for a beginner. Then how can they get a taste of DevRel? Maybe I can say with the last
Sure.
episode with Aishika that Aishika said campus ambassador programs are pretty good way to give you some sense of how DevRel works, if I'm correct.
Be mindful of which programs. So.
Yep, that was
Um,
the agenda
Not
of
to
that episode.
the only thing there I mean is that it's not the campus ambassador programs are bad. It's just not all of them will give you a taste of DevRel. Some will give you a taste of marketing, which is by the way nothing bad. I've done that myself, and I think it's helped me understand specific aspects of growing initiatives or ideas, and that's going to be helpful on different fronts. Sure, but you have to understand which program is going to assist you in your DevRel journey and which not. And for that matter, I will once again bring myself back to to my older point. You don't set out to get a taste of DevRel. You set out to do other things like help out in communities and create content and learn how to build. And that's how it'll come together. So first, get a taste of those individual facets. If once you're doing all of those for a while, you will have certain DevRel experience and exposure, and that's a conclusion you'll come to after you've already done it rather than before. But I
Community
don't
building is
recommend setting out just that I need to go and get a flavor of DevRel. That's not the way to go about it because you'll close yourself off to a lot of different opportunities. I think one of the best experiences I've had in my life was my 2 months as a software developer intern. But I do believe that had I just been fixed on DevRel, that I need to do DevRel and I need to do DevRel and I need to do DevRel, I would never have done that opportunity. And I think I am a far better developer today because of that internship. Because I got to work on a proper project, I got to learn about industry practices. I got to learn how to build for the real world. And I don't believe independent experiences would have given me that. At least they hadn't until this because the mentorship was there, right? So that's just one example of how not fixing on getting a flavor of DevRel allowed me to become a better developer, which in turn led to my to me getting a DevRel opportunity because in DevRel I need to be someone who can build as well, right? So had I not had that experience, I would never have had the exposure to understand um, the tech that I work with today. So that's why I will say try to get a flavor of these individual facets. Try to work with communities, help out with them, whether it's with volunteering, organizing, mentoring. Try to actually build a bit. Get a developer internship. Try to write content about any tech you like. And I'm telling you, once you're doing all of those, you will have gotten a taste of DevRel anyway, not realizing.
yeah, essence. You can feel the essence. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, super cool. Yeah, next. I have one follow-up question. Can you differentiate between developer advocate and developer?
Oh, so they're actually not different, by the way.
Yeah,
Dev advocacy is a part of DevRel. So when we talk about developer relations, we've talked about this domain, right? We've explained what it is. But this in itself is an umbrella term. It's not that developer relations is the role. Developer relations is an umbrella with various different facets around it. One of them is dev advocacy. Similarly, you're going to have dev evangelism or community management or developer education. or developer marketing. You've got all of these different facets under developer relations, under that facet. But advocacy itself is not different from DevRel, it's a part of DevRel.
Okay.
I
Okay, so
think
we got.
I actually wrote a blog on what is DevRel based on my exposure. I think you folks can send it out. I've actually I've talked and elaborated on these different facets in there as well. So if anyone wants to give it a read, please, by all means, because here I've defined what advocacy, evangelism, community management, developer marketing, developer education, all of these are, at least in my exposure. And I will put it out. This is in my exposure, and that's because um, DevRel is such a fluid space. The responsibilities of someone in DevRel can change from company to company because company priorities are different, products necessities are different. So I will say these are from my exposure, but I've tried to keep it as generalist as possible. So do give it a read. I think this should help a little at least.
Yep, it's in the chat if you want to read it. And interesting question: if DevRel is an umbrella where evangelism and other programs come, how is it different from DevOps? We have one in the comments.
DevOps, all right. So um, they're two similar sounding terms. They're actually not close to each other at all.
Yeah.
Yep,
So
easy to get confused.
DevRel, as we defined, is the sort of bridge between a product and an organization, right? People in DevOps, developer operations, are folks who are often involved managing infrastructure for organizations.
Okay.
Um, that's kind of how the IT front has evolved today. I probably won't be the best person to define this because I have limited exposure myself. But the people in DevOps are the ones who are responsible for ensuring that your builds are out there and they're the ones staying up. The infrastructure sustains; it doesn't break down. So it's around these that you'll hear of terms like um, site reliability and etc etc. So they're the ones ensuring that your infrastructure stays um, all right and great. And they're the ones who are managing your deployments and builds and your infrastructure in general. So I think that's an okay definition. Beyond that, please do some research on your own because I am not the best guide on DevOps. I know there are a lot better people than me out there. But yeah, I tried to kind of bring it out there in as basic uh, an explanation as I could.
Yep, that's a good question indeed. Now, another good question which we also had: are there any programs or anything that encourage you or give you a experience of DevRel? I know.
You've got student programs. Um, Microsoft's student ambassador. That's pretty good. That's where I kind of built my network and skills and journey. You've got a lot of community programs, right? You've got the GitHub Campus Experts. You've got um, Microsoft, of course. You've got the Google Developer Student Clubs. That's a lot of different programs of of this sort that you can look out for. Um, I will say one thing, however, if you ever come across, Phoebe talked, and I think you mentioned it that even with Aishika's session, that was around campus ambassadors, right? That's probably a good way. But if you find a program that's just like a DevRel program, keep an eye out. Be wary of what you're getting back from it. Okay, because so with these programs with Microsoft and all, they had priorities, right? They weren't saying we're going to get you into DevRel. That wasn't the thing. That just happened to happen for me because I learned the tech I like to work with today there. I got started with .NET because of that. I tried writing a bit because of that. I did a lot of technical sessions. I found people to collaborate with on initiatives. So I ended up doing the thing that I wanted to do, or rather that I like to do today. At that point, I was just trying to experiment, right? So I learned a lot of what has helped me transition into DevRel professionally today through this program, but that wasn't the program's aim. So again, I'll probably bring this back. I think there's something I'm repeating again and again, but try to focus on those individual facets rather than look for a specific mentorship program or something because DevRel is such a diversified space, right? it's not exactly easy to kind of cater that, right? But you can find independent experiences in a lot of different ways. So yeah, but
That's good advice.
ambassador programs might be a good place to look. Just be wary of what those programs are catering, and you know who's catering that as well, right? Like I can say Microsoft's program is pretty good because I've been there. I've seen how they operate. It might help you get some exposure and start. I know Savo Labs had their champs program, which was around uh, getting the word across about Savo's product, right? So they had community champs and developer champs and that sort of thing, which enabled people to learn how to build these sample solutions or create content around it. That's another example that I had in mind. 12 years field operators, that was another thing, at least for a student, is what I will say. They were trying to help people, be able to speak and get the word across. So a lot of what DevRel aims to achieve is stuff you can find in these. But again, that was not the purpose of these programs. This learning was a byproduct of this experience. So that's what I'll say. You'll find programs that will help you understand how to get about these and learn these practices and get some hands-on experience. But I'm not sure if you'll have a dedicated DevRel program. Haven't seen one of those around, and if I would see one of those around, I'd kind of be a little hesitant in making a call as well, because what am I getting back from there, right? Does that help me code? Does that help me build sample apps? Does that help me with technical writing? What exactly is the purpose of that, right? So that's what I will say to that. But look at ambassador programs. That should be a good place to get started.
Yep, a little research can always help. Great question by Karuna. That is, if you were in a non-technical background, how convenient is it for people to switch into developer relations?
I want to take the example of a person who I've looked up to a lot, Chloe Condon. She was a cloud advocate for Microsoft. She was, I think, at Coinbase for a bit. I've known her from Microsoft because that's where I interacted with her. Amazing person. Um, she got into DevRel from theater. She was a trained actor. She did plays. She got into DevRel afterwards. She did a boot camp. She learned how to build. She learned how to code, and then she moved towards DevRel. I'll tell you another example. Another person I absolutely adore, PJ Metz. Um, he was an educator for I think 8 or 10 years or so. The pandemic happened. He started to learn to code. He started streaming on his Twitch. Today he's an education evangelist for GitLab. I think at least in a world, I can't say for in how the scenario was in the past, and I think even today it's really evolving. But tech and DevRel in general has been welcoming to people, um, as long as they have the relevant skills, as long as you have the ability to build, you have certain validated experience for it, as long as you have the ability to create content, you have your portfolio to show for it, whether it's on video, whether it's your blog. uh, you know Communities don't have a minimum requirement for your tech background. So I think more than what background you need to have for the switch, it's really more about whether you have the relevant skills and some sense of exposure. And if you do, even if it's an alternate form, uh, it doesn't have to be a formal job or a formal education, but if you have alternate ways of explaining and showcasing your experience, someone will be there to welcome you. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Super awesome.
the answer would be a little bit of effort, and it's not that hard at
Oh
all.
yes, high effort. Everything code is high effort.
Yep.
Not nothing. There's no free dessert. That's a fact. Nothing great's just gonna be handed over in a silver platter. If that's happening, you're very fortunate. But uh, you've got to work for a lot of this. Like for me, what I've achieved today is a byproduct of 2.5 years of absolute
Hardware.
hard work and no holidays. That's what led to it. And I don't say burn yourself out or break yourself or push yourself in that process. I kind of did, and I don't endorse a lot of the habits that I have had because I'm trying to change a lot of that, but um, like just bad sleep patterns and stuff is what I'm talking about, and bad health habits. But in general, it's it's gonna be high effort and it's gonna take time. That's what you've got to be willing to put in, right? Um, People who've been in the industry for years and years, uh, you know, the ones who are transitioning into DevRel today, they didn't have the chance to kind of learn and prepare for this opportunity, right? They came across it in their careers. People who've been doing relevant stuff are the ones who kind of took to it and moved towards it. So it doesn't have to be that it's something you start off aiming for, but it's a good idea to get relevant exposure and kind of do stuff along the side. And once you have all of that, go ahead, try your hand at it.
Yeah. We came through many questions, I think, in this session. And the most fascinating question is what are the perks and perks
Oof.
of being a DevRel? I can see your t-shirt as right.
Oh yeah, I bet that's everyone in the company, to be honest. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean there are perks to DevRel, of course, right? Typically, you're like you're gonna be a face for your organization in a lot of ways, right? Because you tend to be uh, the one who's around communities, who's interacting. So it does help with personal brand for sure. I think for me, it definitely helps with mine. Um, I had the opportunity to be on AppRight's first ever live stream as the first ever speaker because I was the first ever. So, it does help with personal brand. It does help it create a face. At the same time, I get to touch on a lot of different fronts. So I get to experiment more, which means I'm learning from a lot of different directions as well. Um, Part of my job is to interact with more and more people out there. So I enjoy the constant learning that I tend to have. Right, it becomes easier to build partnerships or collaborations or networks, which beyond the professional actually hang on for your personal as well, because people may engage with the brand, but they're connecting with you, right? So
Yeah.
there are perks to it because these responsibilities help you network better, build a better personal brand, get your hands on a lot of different fronts that you can learn about. Those are probably some few of my top um, perks, at least, that I will mention.
Those are some
There are
great
some cons
perks,
as well, though, by
actually.
the way. Like,
Mm.
I think with pros, we need to talk cons as well, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
that was going to
Yeah.
be the next
Like
question.
there are some of these around, in all honesty. Like, for example, at least with the way my socials are branded today, even if I'm off the job, I'm not seen off the job. I am a representative regardless of whether I am uh, I'm off of my work hours. So I have to be prepared that today the statements that I make will have could have certain repercussions, right? Which may not be a pressure everyone has to face. You can kind of course, create that divide between your personal thing and your professional. A lot of people don't. It's a very personal choice, right? Because then that, of course, has means that you might not be able to enjoy some of the perks. So it's really a compromise and a decision that you have to take for yourself. I have been okay about it, but it's something for people to think about, right? Aside from that, there are certain fronts that you might want to work on a little more, but responsibilities change that, right? So if, for example, I am in DevRel right now, my organization, we're a smaller startup, so I take up a lot of different responsibilities now. If I am just like I just want to code the whole day or something, I can't just jump into that because there's a lot of other responsibilities as well, right? A little of a lot means there's a lot you might have to get your hands on, some of which you might not want. So it's a conscious decision whether you're willing to get into those work. Again, there is nothing I would do that I have a personal or an ethical issue with. Um, but I take up responsibilities and I prioritize on certain things, and I have to and to understand that these may take me into a certain direction away from what I've envisioned, or there's a lot of compromises on a very minute level as well as a macro level that you have to think about. So it is a world of compromise for sure. There's always you always have to balance a lot of scales,
It's a
and yeah,
trade-off.
there's compromises. That's something you have to think of. But you have to. That's tough to think about beforehand as well, right? You have to be okay making some of these trade-offs beforehand. Like for me, I was prepared. Just for example, I like to play around with code from time to time. I like to build for myself. Tomorrow, if I look at my career though, from developer relations, I don't envision myself being a software engineer 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, right? Because while I get to touch on code and like to play and I get to play around in this as well, software engineering daily is a very different ball game, right? So I've made a decision that 10 years down the line, that's not the direction I want to go towards. And that's something you have to think of on a very personal level. Because for me, DevRel wasn't that I was doing it just to run away from software dev. I did that, and had I not had DevRel, I would have absolutely not minded doing software development professionally either. Um, I am a little. Uh, I like certain tech more. I would have liked to work on those a little more, but beyond that, it's something I would have been okay taking. Honestly, it's just DevRel became a priority for me. But yeah, tomorrow, if I look at my career and my work today, if this is how I go on, 5 years down the line, that's not going to be the best position for me unless I take a break and really start from scratch, right? Just an example again. It's not that this has to be the case for every single company. I know some people who regularly work on code as DevRel either, but again, that's a company or a product priority. So there's all it because it's such a diversified space. It's not even that I can generalize some of these for each organization or brand because it's such a diversified space. It's such a fluid space, but you have to be ready for certain compromises from time to time.
Indeed, that's a great one. So I got one question from Bhuvi. How would you describe DevRel in one word or
The
sentence?
bridge
Well,
between developers and a product slash organization. That's my
although
one
Aditya
sentence.
just said it's not easy to describe it
That's my
in
one
a
sentence. I think it's
yes.
just that it's easy to say it in one sentence. It's difficult to explain to someone who might not understand what the bridge might mean, right? Because now today I'm in a position where I look at it from a very different perspective. Maybe a year back it would have been a very different thought process for me as well, right? So yeah, I can define it in one sentence. It's just I choose to explain and give more context. It's also
Yeah,
defined in the blog link that has been shared earlier, by the way. Like I've explained the context there as well and for how I defined DevRel and the facets. So that's probably a good read to look at.
it is indeed a great blog. So, all right. Since you are still a college student, right, and also working as a DevRel and managing multiple communities, how do you do it? What is the
Okay.
work-life balance that you follow?
I think the big thing you have to realize is there's going to be things that you'll have to say no to, and as well you have to understand that you have to make certain compromises, right? Like I do a lot of community work. I do my job. I have college. So I made a decision years back that I am not going to be a 10 CGPA guy or a scholarship guy. I'm going to maintain my 7 and I'm going to work at these things because that's what I wanted to do. And it was a conscious decision. So college sometimes takes a backseat for me. Not to say I'm flunking exams, that's not what I'm doing, but you know, I choose to prioritize on this work instead. Right. I have the privilege to do that, I will say. I've been fortunate enough to do that. No, I can't compare my circumstances for everyone, but that's been a compromise that I've made. Similarly, today when I do my job, if I need to take a back step from certain independent community work at times, I take a back step because I need my rest, right? I need my free time. I need my me time, essentially. So if I need to ensure that I'm spending time with myself for myself, just relaxing or having fun, then I'm going to do that. And for that, if I need to say no to a couple of speaking opportunities, that's okay by me. because it's for me, right? I need to do that to sustain. So it's you need to ensure that you can say no to a lot of different things. You can't just keep piling on stuff on your plate all the time just because it might be a good thing. There's gonna be so many good things around you. You will never know which one to take. So we think that every single one is the best, but sometimes you just have to say no, and it's okay to do that. So that's what I've learned to do. I've just learned to say no to a lot of things, and I think that's been the big game changer for me, at least in terms of how I create a sense of balance. Because I'm gonna make sure that no matter what happens, I'm gonna keep some time around for my gaming or for a bit of Netflix or to chill with my friends. Just have random chats and calls with them, and I'm gonna keep time for that. Even if there is work outside of my job that could be damn good. If I need to prioritize on some of these things, I will do that, and it's okay. Even if I lose out on one conference, I'm not. It's not gonna break or destroy my rep or my career, right? Of course, there's some stuff you do for work, and I'm not talking about that. By the way, I don't mess around with my job by any means. I'll make sure my job is done, but stuff beyond my job, stuff that's independent, that's where I take a little back step from at times, and that's okay. So it really comes down to personal balances, right? There's going to be times where I take up a lot of that as well. Like for example, this weekend I had a session today, I had a session yesterday. I'm traveling right now and I'm still doing this, right? Because I have the time, I have the availability, I have the flexibility, I have the mind space for it. So I take this up. Had I not had that, I would have just said no in the first place, for example, right? And I have no problem doing that. There's enough stuff I say no to that. And it's okay to do that, to take care of yourself. Just learn to say no. That's the way.
Yeah.
Most important
Uh,
skill.
yeah, as a beginner in tech, it's you're pretty energetic, and even I used to say yes to everything until I get burnout. So learning to say no
It's very
is
rare.
definitely, yeah, it,
Like
it is
we don't,
absolutely really.
I think we just like pushing ourselves because in a lot of ways, a lot of places, the hustle thing has been glorified, but you don't need to have a side hustle. Like just for example, I don't manage a personal brand sort of community. I don't have an Aditya over a Discord, or I am not leading any independent community. I stay involved with initiatives, but I don't do that because there's enough people doing that, and I want my meeting, so I'm okay with that, right? I help out with my job. I help out with my company's community. I'm focused at that. I'm happy working there. I don't need to have another Aditya Obrai community to kind of sustain myself in my free time, right? For someone who wants, please by all means go forward. That's nothing bad. Okay, I don't mean to say it's a bad thing to do. It's a great thing to do. You just have to decide whether that's the thing you want to do, whether you have the time for it, whether you can sustain it. Because I know people who've sustained amazing communities like that, right? Look at Eddie Hub, for example. Think about where that started, where that's grown, and how what an amazing and inclusive community that is. And it's fantastic to see that, right? So it's by no means a bad thing, but it's something you have to think about for yourself whether that's what you want to do.
Yep. Although Aditya Obera community is definitely a fantastic idea. I know
Windows.
I can send some tweets coming on that after this show. All right, that's great. We will have some
Is
questions if
Ashwin
you
planning to
have.
start a fan club now? Huh.
Mm, there was already a fan club way before you thought.
We'll start in
Ooh,
Instagram.
is that the case? Please add me there as
Yeah.
well. I want to have fun. I just want to ask why.
Why
Like
not?
I'm just saying. I'm just gonna say, none of us are perfect. Please, just putting that out there.
Yeah, but definitely
We
you
just
do
have fun.
great work
Yeah,
in the community.
we have fun. Yeah,
Yeah, but you are
and
doing great
nice.
work in the community. In fact,
Thank you.
you might wanna check out Aditya's Twitter. I've dropped it in the chat, and we are about near the time. And yeah, before we conclude, I don't see any more questions. Do you have any final wrapping advice for the viewers? Something to keep in mind as a developer
Just
relations.
please give yourself the chance to actually experiment before you take this decision. Um, I'm telling you that the decision to get into DevRel is one I took after 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years in communities. I did not rush myself on that. I spent enough time gaining enough relevant experience, trying different facets before I came to that decision. And I think that's the best thing I could have done because I did not close myself off to anything. Right? I gave myself a chance to actually try things out. And please make sure to give yourself that same chance because putting the blinders on and being like, I just want to do DevRel is not a healthy way to go about it. It's gonna really hamper your learning experience, your exposure, your understanding of these spaces, right? So give yourself the chance to experiment, try your hands at development, try your hands at communities, try your hands at content. Um, Give yourself an opportunity at all of them, and only after that think about whether this is something you want to pursue professionally. And if your answer is no, that is a very valid answer. That is totally all right. But give yourself the chance to actually make that decision rather than pre-decide and pre-choose and just run towards it without thinking whether it's actually for you or not.
Yep, that's absolutely great advice. With that said, that is the end of the show. I don't see any more questions, but even if you have questions, Hyderabad has a Discord community. Feel free to join that, ask your questions. Aditya's Twitter is there.
Yeah,
We are
yeah,
there on Twitter
just
too.
absolutely go tweet and tag Ashwin and just like spam Ashwin. It's gonna be so
Absolutely.
much fun, right?
Yeah, it's been a while
Ashwin be
since
like,
I had a.
I had a community for this, but okay, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely welcome any questions. No,
Yeah,
now, yeah. If you learned something from this episode, take a screenshot, share what you learned. That is, I would definitely encourage that. Share what you
yeah,
learned here. Yeah, tag us, tag Aditya. We'll repost that. We'll retweet that. And with that said, thank you so much for coming, Aditya, on this show. Thank you so much for the audience for joining us tonight. And with that said, that is the wrap of the event. I am Ashwin Kumar Uppala, your host. This is
yeah.
Ankush, your co-host. We will see you day after tomorrow, where we have Vaishnavi talk about UI
Oh,
UX. It is
nice.
going to be pretty interesting. We will see you in the next episode. Bye, good night, and have a nice day.